Hey everybody, we're just letting people filter in. So one of the things that would be great as people are coming in, if you want to let us know where you're from and in the chat. And I would also love to know, what is the one thing in your work that takes up the most of your time? May.
And I'll add to that. When you use the chat, make sure it says all panelists and attendees so that we can all see questions and answers and all that.
Yeah, because our goal with these 3 webinars is to kind of help save time. So I'm very curious kind of to know what kinds of things people spend the most of their time on. Maybe things you don't wish you didn't spend time on, because it also gives us ideas for other things to talk to you about later. Sacramento. Yeah, making sure the data is correct. That is very labor intensive. Salt Lake Community College. Gift processing, yep. Mountain View, in the Bay Area near San Jose, right? Cleaning data, yep. So Wendy, if you haven't taken a look at it, we have several really good blog posts about cleaning data in Excel. If you happen to clean data in Excel, you may clean it in something else, but you might want to take a look at our blog posts because they're very step-by-step and illustrated to help you save time on that. Trying not to read.
Yeah, we're hoping to talk about some ways you can make it a little easier when you have to do the same report over and over again.
Yep. Cleaning and verifying statistics, yep. Cleaning, yep. Standardizing and supplementing.
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that, Alan. I'll make a little note here, and I'll try. There's a couple tricks with missing data that we use frequently, so I'll try to add that in there.
All right, we'll just give it 1 or 2 more minutes.
And I'm not sure if we have it enabled, but you're welcome to have your sound and camera on. We don't have like a huge webinar with like millions of people, so you can jump right in with your questions if you like, instead of using the chat. Cool. So Taj, do you want to go ahead and get us started?
Yeah. So we'll start. I'm going to share my screen with folks and talk a little bit about reporting and fundraising, why it's so important. And then I'll hand the hosting back over to Jacob, and he will show you some tips and tricks. And yeah. So go ahead and do that. All right. So there we go. So just a little bit about us. So we are Insider. We are a DC-based consulting firm, and we've been around for almost 20 years. So we work with all kinds of fundraisers and nonprofits, big and little, lots of different content areas, and we love helping nonprofits to manage their data. So first, I just want to talk a little bit about sort of why is it fundraisers really suffer with frustrating data reports. You can see from some of the comments people are having with cleaning, and there's a lot of different ways that happens, but they are really sort of painfully aware of that, right? That this is an issue. Reports are really challenging. And so what this results in is sometimes you have donors and maybe they're just not really interested in your mission. Maybe they used to be, but they are not so much anymore. But you keep sending them appeals, right? We don't have a really good way often to filter out people who aren't responding anymore. And then we end up spending time and also money on folks. And that's sort of one of the challenges that we often see. Another one is that sometimes you might have donors who could give more, would be willing to give more, but they're not getting the attention they need. So often people will have some information about their donors that respond to their digital campaigns, or donors that respond to a direct marketing, or that maybe they went to your gala back when we had galas, or interact with you in other ways, but you can't really see the full scope of their participation and investment in your organization, because everybody's got their data in different places. And they might be a really great person to cultivate, for example, for a larger ask or for a planned giving relationship, but you don't really know that. And then also, not having good reports and good data can really impact getting the right message at the right time. So sometimes we'll see that the donor gets like 5 emails from you today, and then they don't hear from you for 2 or 3 weeks because everybody in each department emailed them all at the same time, because that data is not coordinated. So it's pretty costly, right? The Association of Fundraising Professionals found that 63% of organizations meet their fundraising goal, but the rest of them are not able to meet those goals. And according to Blackbaud, you could be missing out on $3.5 million in donations when you don't maximize your data. So it's something that's there. It's something that you have, that you do a lot of work to collect, that you could be getting a lot more out of. And the reason a lot of people don't is the data gets trapped in different systems, right? Because what a system looks like that does a good job with digital marketing campaign, that system is pretty different than the system you might use for planned giving. And often the systems don't connect to each other, they don't talk to each other, but they work perfectly well for the people doing their everyday work in the digital marketing or planned giving spheres, for example. Often they don't have the reports that they need. You might have these sort of canned reports, but it's not really how you need to see it. And you can't pull data from different systems and get everything in one place. So people end up spending a lot of time dumping data into spreadsheets, and they might actually be collecting into spreadsheets initially. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But they spend a lot of time manipulating the data by hand, cleaning the data by hand, and trying to bring it together to get the insights they need beyond their canned reports. That's one of the reasons we wanted to start this 3-webinar series with talking about some Excel trips. And it's also one of the reasons on our blog post, which you can take a look at, we have a lot of really good sort of nuts and bolts blogs about how to manage things in Excel, because it can be a pretty useful tool. So what we do is we help people to target and keep those donors. We work with fundraising professionals and nonprofits to create a blueprint for all their data. So where is everything? Where does it live? Help them think about how they can bring it all together. We have tools for sort of integrating data across different systems without changing systems. And then we automate reporting and visualization so that fundraisers can keep the systems they've got and still have one place they go to where they can look at all the information about their donors across the different campaigns. So in this way, we can help you improve your donor relationships. We know how important they are. They make your work possible. And we have this exchange, right, where we promise them impact in exchange for their donations, and we want to follow through on that. They believe in your mission, but sometimes you just need a little bit of help getting the information you need to have the right kind of conversation and relationship with them. So in a nutshell, we bring together digital, direct, annual giving, planned giving, galas, and other events. We bring it all together into one place, and you no longer have to wrangle that data. And often it takes a lot of work with messing with spreadsheets off your table. But if you're not, you're about to find out how to do this better, even though you're using those. So I'm going to hand this back to Jacob. And while we're going, just feel free to type questions in the chat. I can answer them while Jacob's talking, or he will also take a look at it periodically. And also just to let you know, this is the first of a series of 3 webinars, so there will be 2 other ones. Feel free to sign up for our newsletter, take a look at our blog posts. We have a lot of other free resources people can use to help with this. So I'll hand it over to Jacob.
Cool, thanks, Todd. So yeah, we're going to go over a few things here. So we'll go over how to clearly label your data and why you should do it. Color coding, it's kind of basic, but it can be really useful. Freezing column headers, and then using templates for similar repeated work and also for style guides. So I'm going to kind of go through an example of a worksheet and do each of these things. And we can also take questions, throughout. It's only about 20 minutes of content, so we left plenty of time for questions. Feel free to jump in or ask them on the chat, and Taj, if you don't mind, just kind of keep an eye on that in case I miss them.
You got it.
All right. So now you should be able to see an Excel spreadsheet. Let me just switch this. I'm going to share it a little differently. Share the one window so it'll be a little more zoomed in. Cool. All right, so you should be able to see an Excel spreadsheet here. And so this spreadsheet is just some data on pledges and donations made by employees in King County in the state of Washington. So it's just some kind of generic information that's publicly available. And so that's why, you know, it's easy to share, but it is actually real data. So it's a decent example because it looks pretty real, because it is real. So here, what I've done is I've got one page where I might want to put a summary. I've got another page here where I said, okay, I gathered this data from this website. And then all the data sets I downloaded, I've got on different tabs down here. So one kind of initial thing is we always keep a history of data. So if we download a data set, or you know, from a system or from a public source, or whenever we actually receive a data set, we keep that as is, so we don't alter the original. So for each of these, I downloaded the years 2015 to 2019 and just added them to the spreadsheet. So now I'm going to go back and I'm just going to change each label. So the tab label is going to just be original 2015, and then here I'll do original 2019. Delete that there. And do this one, original 2016, original 2017. So this is just standardizing the labeling, which again, super basic thing, easy to do, but makes a huge difference, especially if this is a repeated process. That way, if you want to write down instructions for the process, you can refer to original 2017 or original 2016. Like you can refer to a specific worksheet name or tab name. It makes it a little easier to kind of communicate with other people about it, and also just remember which tab is which. So here I've got, let's see, 2015. I'm just going to drag these and put them in order. 2017 chronological order here. So it's looking a little more organized now. I've got my, oops, I need to do that. So I've just got my originals here, and I'm just not going to alter any of that data. Now I do have another one where I've got data gathered from, so I'm just going to call this instructions / notes. Oops, I forgot I can't do a slash. Instructions and notes. And so any other notes I have about, you know, caveats for the data or any instructions I want to add about how to use it or how to create this data set, I can just go ahead and put in that tab. And then this last one, I'm going to make it summary. So one thing is just that labeling. So that's true of, you know, your worksheet tabs, but it's also true of your columns. So one thing we might do here, I'm just going to add a new tab and call it all years. And then I'm going to move the data from each of these to all years, and I'm going to add a column that is year and say, let's see, that first one was 2015. And so I'm just going to copy it and scroll down to the bottom here. I'm pressing and holding shift and clicking, so it just highlights all those cells. And then I'm going to paste in 2015. So the other thing, one of the things I mentioned too, is freezing the top pane. So I'm not going to alter these original data sets, but in my all years data sets is where I'm going to combine them. So in that data set, I'm going to go ahead and highlight that top row. I'm going to make it bold. And I'm going to click the wrap text so that I can actually read my titles. And then I'm also going to freeze pane. So this is in the View tab. And you can say, let me see, where is it here? If it's not wide enough. It's on the right over here. So I can say I can freeze just the top row or just the first column. But this way, when I scroll down, it keeps my columns in the same place. And it's just easier to read. If I'm way down here at the bottom and I can't see my column headers, I don't remember, you know, the difference between these. So freezing those panes just makes it easier. Also, I tend to leave my font size pretty small, especially in the kind of raw data sets. When I do a summary, I might make the font, you know, much easier to read. But I'm not really digging through the detail. I'm looking at big picture stuff in the kind of data set itself. So I'm going to keep doing this here, and I'm just going to click the top cell here, and I'm just going to press Control A or Command A on a Mac, copy that, and paste it in. One of the tricks with doing this, so this is combining a data set too, is now I can, if I take this set of headers and go ahead and wrap it as well, I can compare it to make sure that the different data sets still have the same columns. So this is one of the things that'll happen sometimes if you're collecting data and you have different spreadsheets and you're putting them together, is maybe the columns aren't in the same order. So as you do this, you can say, okay, well, oh, yep, there we go, that's good. And this is my 2016 data, so I'm just gonna.
Hey, Jacob.
Yeah, go ahead.
Rebecca had a good question that I think something a lot of people struggle with. Sometimes, she said, sometimes when she's trying to freeze panes, if she wants to do more than just the top row, so sometimes it'll do 2, sometimes it'll do 4. It kind of has a mind of its own. So this might be a good time to do a little,
Oh, sure, that's a good point.
freeze pane piece.
So I'm just gonna highlight these 2 columns, and if I double click in between them, it'll auto fit their width like that. So let's say that those are kind of my 2 things I really care about, is department, division, and then these are all the data points beside them. So really, I want to freeze these columns as well. So there's different types of freezing here. So the one that I initially did under the View tab is freeze the top row. So I'm going to click unfreeze pane, so that's going to unfreeze everything. And then that same option that used to be unfreeze panes is now freeze panes. So wherever my cell is that my little green box here, if I click freeze panes, it's going to freeze to the left of it and above it. So if you notice here, I've actually frozen it. It's kind of a little hard to see, but there's a little cross, and I've frozen everything to the 7th row and everything from column J to the left. That's not really useful, so I'm just going to click unfreeze again. I'm going to say I want to actually freeze it right here. So I want to keep these 2 columns and keep this 1 row. So if I click C2 and click freeze panes, now when I scroll, I still keep my first 2 columns, and I always keep my headers at the top. So yeah, the freeze panes can be a little tricky to kind of remember, but yeah, you can always go back and unfreeze panes if you put it in the wrong place, and then just kind of start over. So sometimes I forget whether it starts on the left or right, so I might do this, freeze it, and be like, whoops, I meant to do it a little further over. So I just move my cursor, unfreeze, and then refreeze, and now, yep, it's in the right place. So good question. And yeah, this is also, again, so super handy when you're combining data sets or like that, because you can look at those columns and make sure they line up. So I'm going to keep going with that. And all right, so I just did a Control A again on the top left cell, and that highlighted the full set. One thing to remember whenever you do Control A or Command A on a Mac is it will stop if there's a blank column or a blank row. So everything, you have to have something in the first column and something in the first row. So if I had something like this, and now if I do my Control A or Command A, you see how it stops, it doesn't do the full data set. Now, if you wanted to do the full data set, you can always do the thing on the little triangle up at the top left, and it will highlight absolutely the entire spreadsheet. But one trick to remember is just make sure, and this kind of talks to that labeling piece, make sure that every single column in your data set has a label. Even if the label is just column H, it will just prevent, it's just really important for sorting, for copying and pasting, for highlighting, pretty much anything you do where you're trying to manipulate multiple columns. If you have a column name missing, it will tend to corrupt your data. So just add in a column name no matter what, even if it's just a placeholder like the letter H, the letter I. Because see now, if maybe there's some data down here I want to capture, if I go up to the top left and do Control A again, because these have headers at the top, it's going to include that. So now that's fake data, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete that and actually copy it. And go back to my all years. And here I'm just going to paste that in and just check again my my headers match. Yep. So this one, if you notice, now this is a good example. So in 2017 now, because that's the year I'm on, I don't have this column. So I just discovered that, oh, in that data set, I'm missing something, but the rest all seem to line up. So I'm just going to copy my year down so I know where this data came from. And then I'm going to delete that header row because once I've matched it up, I don't need it anymore. Cool. So I'll just do 2018 and 2019 real quick. All right, so actually in this one, I'm noticing it looks like the columns maybe don't line up, so I might need to move some stuff around. So here, so total pledge to date, employees in department, employees participating, employees pledged. So this is, they changed the column order between those years. So what I'm probably going to do here is I'm just going to delete the stuff I just added, and I'm going to make it match my template that I'm loading data into. So I'm just going to copy that. I'm highlighting that entire first row, copying it, going to that original 2018 data, and I'm just going to insert that whole row above it. Yep. And I'll go ahead and wrap these cells. So now I can just compare and match up. So employees and departments. So these all match over here. And new employees, 12%. So I'm just going to move this, these two columns, which are new. I'm just going to highlight both of these. And I'm actually going to cut them and make sure that I stay on the same top and then paste them over here. So data's still there. And I'm just going to go ahead and move these two. There. So this is a good example of I'm actually manipulating my original. So generally, I'd probably just make a copy of this before I started doing this. So just right-click the worksheet, say move or copy, click create copy, and then tell it where you want it. And so it'll make it, so then I could do all my adjustments there and not worry about messing up my original. I forgot to do that, so I'm just going to keep going with where I am here. So I'll go ahead and add in the year. This is 2018. And I can pull in those extra columns. That's totally fine. So I'm just going to highlight all those. Make sure I got the right, yep, do all of that. Go to my all years tab and go down to the bottom. And then I'm going to paste those in. And then I'm just going to verify, okay, I matched up these two, the year, and then I'm going to just take these two new columns and put them at the top because I didn't have labels for those. So there we go, and make those bold. So now I've added that, and we'll do 2019. See how this adds up. Nice, employees in department. Yes, looks like it has a similar kind of different, slightly different columns there. So I'm going to do the same thing there, or I'll do it the right way this time. So I'm going to go ahead and copy original 2019, copy, and then I'll grab the column headers I want to use. So copy that first row, and I'm going to click the first row here, right click and insert, so it'll insert above it. And then I'll just make sure these match up. So it looks like I need to pull these two. Here I'm just cutting and pasting, so I'm cutting these and pasting these over here. In my merge, make sure they match up. So these two now need to go to the left, it looks like. And this one I've got, instead of new employees, I got new participants. So it may be the same thing. I may need to look up my data set to find out. I'm not sure. I'm just going to go ahead and put this over here because it doesn't 100% match up and I don't want to mess anything, get confused about it. Oops. I'll go ahead and add in my year, 2019. All right, and then Now see, this is, I can't use that Control A because I've got some missing columns here. So I'm gonna just drag my mouse across it to highlight everything, make sure I've highlighted it. So I'm gonna go to all years and get rid of that one that didn't match and add it in. Oops. Copy. And see, if you notice here, I do this, I mean, all the time, and we work with data quite frequently, and sometimes I'll forget a step, you know? So this kind of, again, goes to making sure that you've got instructions and notes that make sense, that can even be for you, if you do this all the time, can be a reminder for you of like the order that you know, it's most helpful to do this in. Alrighty, so I just finished adding all my years. I can delete this little temporary table or worksheet I use for adjustments. All right, go back to my all years and just make sure these match up. They all do. This one doesn't have a title at the top, so I'm just gonna copy and paste it, make it bold, and then delete that header row. So now I've got headers across the top. I know where the data came from because I've got a year here. And now I've got a nice clean data set that, it's not fully cleaned yet, but it's at least all consolidated. So I've just got one place, one set of headers and columns, and I can kind of start there on any additional cleaning. But that way I don't have to clean 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different sheets and then combine them. I've actually done all the combining first, and then I can do my cleaning. So for instance, this total pledge to date is a dollar amount. So I'm going to highlight that whole column and convert it to a accounting format here. So that'll just do the whole column. That's something I would have otherwise had to do multiple times if I had done it on each sheet. The percentages here, I'm going to change that one to a %, although that looks like it messed it up. So I'm going to leave that one where it is. And then, yeah, I think that's the only things I see on here. So then if I wanted to summarize this, let's say I was doing a pivot table or something like that, just going to highlight it here and insert pivot table. So if I wanted to see departments and the total of employees in each department, and then the total that participated. So this is just kind of summarizing that information. And then I could, in here, I can still do a freeze panes even inside of a pivot table. So this pivot table is kind of a pain because I don't remember what these columns are. So here, if I click in this cell right under the top row and just to the left of the columns, I can still do that freeze panes right there. And now my pivot table is also frozen. Now, one thing about pivot table, I noticed there's a message in the chat that says can always use help with pivot tables. And yeah, they are, yes, we will make the recording available afterwards for sure. Yeah, so pivot tables, they can cause as many problems as they solve sometimes. So if you notice on this one, I've got detention, special events, and total. So maybe I missed something because I also see totals on all of these. Maybe I missed something in my data set, so I'm going to go back and look. And it looks like, yep, so there's grand totals and individual totals. So one thing I'm going to do here, I'm going to highlight, I'm going to go to my top left cell, so A1, to my Control A, and because I'm at the bottom, I can see that it highlighted everything. And now I'm going to go to the Data tab and click Filter. So up at the top here, now I've got these filters that I can say, okay, I only want to see, X, Y, and Z. So I can do that when I'm just looking through the data here. So I can say, okay, I don't want grand total, and I don't want each of these totals. I could go through these individually. I'm not going to do that. I just wanted to show you it's possible. I'm going to go back to my pivot table, and I can do that there. So there, under my row labels, where it lists those rows, I actually have a little down arrow, and I can make this window a little bigger. I can just uncheck each of these total boxes that I don't need. So these filters are really, really useful and handy so that you can do a filter directly on your data set on a table, or you can do it in a pivot table and remove kind of any categories that may that you want to exclude or you don't need. So I'm just going to go ahead and click through these fairly quick. I may miss some here, but I just want to give you the general idea. Yeah, that's fine for now. So go ahead and close this. And so now I just removed all the ones that are totals there that don't need. And then I can also, if I click in either of these columns, I can sort directly from there. So if I click my sort button, it will actually sort A to Z, or I can tell it to sort, descending the opposite direction. You can also right click and sort in a pivot table, smallest to largest, or oldest to newest. And then if you want to do more complicated sorting, you can click the same button you use for filtering, and you've got an option there to sort by different options. So I can sort by the department name here, by the sum of the employees in the department, or by the sum of participants. I don't want to go too deep into pivot tables until we take some questions, but I will show you one other thing, which is that, so maybe I don't want sum, maybe I want average. I can click to, in the pivot table fields that comes up when I make a pivot table. If I click inside the pivot table, this should show up on the right. So here, if I'm clicked over to the right, it disappears, but if I click in the pivot table, I've got that summary again, and I can say, okay, well, these are the two columns I made. If I click the little I or right click them, I can change it from sum to average, for instance. So now I've got average employees. Because I have multiple years, I've got average for each year. So then I was going to mention missing data too, and this data set's a perfect example of that, because remember, we had some columns over here where they were only in some data set. So I think this new participants maybe was only in the 2019 data set, and these two were only in like 2017, 2018, 2019. So one thing you might do is actually mark missing versus blank. And the difference is blank might mean, it was not relevant. It might actually mean something, versus missing means like, even if there was an answer, it was there was not a place to put it, kind of thing. So that gets a little technical, but it can be really useful on filtering your data too. So if you've added these data filters to the top, which again is in the data tab, and you click filter, you can filter out your missing or your blank data separately, or handle it separately. So here I'm just doing 2019, and it did not have this %op goal here. So I'm just going to make all of these say NA. And now if I click in my filter at the top, I've got two different things. I've got blanks and I've got NAs. So that way I can easily filter them differently and look at and treat them differently, because they may legitimately be different. Like it may be that in one year we use this measure, and in a different year we use this one, and you can convert them. So I could actually convert them, between, or something like that. One other thing with missing data that's really useful. So if I want to add a column here, I actually have to turn off my filters, add my column. I'm going to call this status. And then I'm going to click my top left cell again, Control A to make sure I highlight everything, and then add my filters back. So this is something I do when I'm reviewing a data set. Like right here, I say I missed an NA on the grand total because it was filtered out. But so what I might do here is say, okay, I'm going to filter any of those totals that I want or didn't want. So it's a little bit bigger. So total. And I'll just do a few so you can see. So I'm going to exclude all these. So under status, I'm going to write exclude. Oops. And I usually will do two things. So if data is like being ignored, so the other one I use is like ignore. If I'm ignoring it or excluding it, I just note that, and I tend to use a hashtag in front of it. So just like the pound symbol or shift 3, just because then it'll sort to the top of my list. And then if data's okay, I'll say okay. And that way I can easily filter out my okay data versus the data I'm ignoring. Or I can say review, and then I can easily say if this is some data here that I'm gonna need to go back and do more research on to verify that kind of thing. So you do review or verify. And these aren't like Excel things, these are just things that I do, and they're kind of flags for me. So where this comes in handy, I'm just gonna mark all of these ignore. And then I'm going to, oops, go up to the top and clear my filters, which again is on that data tab next to the filter button. You can clear all your filters. And then I'm gonna highlight everything again and do my pivot table again. And I'm gonna use status as a filter. So I'm gonna make the same table. So department and employees participating. Yeah. So then on the status, I'm going to filter out the ignores. So that's one way too that like to handle that missing data is give every row of data a status, and then you can actually in your pivot table or in your summaries filter out on things you don't need. So for instance, I'm noticing in this data set I've got a lot of blanks. So I may want to actually go through here and say unselect this, and I want to select all the blanks and change all of their statuses to ignore. So I'm just copying an ignore that's already there and pasting it next to each one. Now, if I go back to my pivot table and I right-click it and refresh it, because I'm filtering out all the ignores, it just removed all that data. So now I have a nice, just the ones that actually had data filled in, that kind of thing. So I wanted to go one or two more things real quick. So just, again, the labeling at the bottom here. So I should label this something like summary, ignoring blanks. And then I call this one, you know, summary with blanks. So I mentioned the color coding. And if you notice, I've gotten a lot of tabs down at the bottom and they can kind of blend into each other. So one thing you can do, if you click one tab and you press and hold shift, you can click through another, and this will kind of highlight all the tabs. If you then right click one of them, you can change that tab color. And so here for the original data, I might just make it, say, blue. And then for my summaries, I might make just clicking and holding my control button to highlight these. And now I'm just going to right click and make all my summaries kind of a deep orange. And then I'm just going to move these, oops, yeah, there we go, together. Okay, so now I've got only really two colors here, but it's a lot easier for me to quickly glance. So if I want to look at summaries, I can glance at the orange ones. If I want to look at the original data, glance at the blue. Just a quick kind of reminder. I wouldn't go with very many colors, but when you have like any large groupings that you have to really scroll through, like this one's a pretty, if the window's not super wide, like I can't even see all these, so I have to scroll through them. So it's helpful to color code so you can easily kind of pick those up. And then let me see if there's anything I missed. Yeah, so for all of these, I mean, this could then be converted into a template. So I could write the instructions of what I just did in my instructions tab, give this to a coworker or use it myself whenever I need to make this report again next year, kind of use this as a template. So yeah, I think that's all I have here, and happy to take any questions and answer any questions I missed in the chat.
So I think we got everything in the chat. Is there anything else people are wondering about, which also includes things that may not be in the scope of this webinar, but things that might give us ideas for things we want to talk about later?
Yeah, and I'm happy to do a demo now, or yeah, like Taj says, I mean, we'll always keep it in consideration for our next webinars. And I know we got into a little bit advanced here with the pivot tables. I know somebody mentioned that. I'm happy to kind of talk a little more about those too.
Yeah, we can also do a pivot table webinar, like standalone, maybe early next year, because I think it seems like a lot of people are interested in that. So yeah. Renee's asking for formulas to automate the coding.
So formulas to automate the coding. So do you mean, when you say coding, do you mean like adding in this status? Yeah, yeah. So yeah, there a good formula that's very like general purpose. I'm gonna go up here, go to my data tab and clear my filters. So I've got a nice, see all my data here. So in that status, I'm just going to go ahead and sort it. These are all together. And then, so these are the ones I manually marked ignore, but what if I want the rest of them, I want to have it automatically figure it out. So an if statement is a really good function for just general use. So here I'm going to say equals, because all formulas start with equals, if, and then I can put a logical test. So this is equal to this. So I'm just going to say, I think, yeah, I've got an is blank here. So I can say is blank, and this employee's participating. So that's, I'm on row 324. So I just highlighted E324. So now I've got this if is blank. So that's going to check to see if this cell is blank. And if it is, so if it's true, then I'm going to say in double quotes, I'm going to have my ignore. And if it's not blank, I'm going to have in double quotes, okay. So this is going to look through each row here on this employees participating and actually go through and compare. So let me just, if I copy that formula, and we'll go down to the bottom here. And I just highlighted all these and pasted that. So then that formula now, if you look, even on row 494, it's working there. And I'm going to use it. I'm just going to get rid of my original. So I had those ignores in there. I'm just going to actually copy that formula above those two. So yeah, I actually ignored some ones I shouldn't, or that weren't blank. So yeah. A similar one you could do. So the if statement, like I said, is really useful. So I could add multiple levels. This gets a little complicated, but so I can say, okay, if it's blank, mark it ignore, otherwise mark it okay. But I can actually nest another if statement in there to say, okay, if the column A has the word total in it, I also want to ignore it. So I can say write A2, which is that first cell up there, and total has 5 letters. So I'm say write total 5 equals total, then ignore, otherwise I'll keep it okay. So what that's doing is it's taking the right 5 letters from cell A2 and comparing it to see if it's equal to total. And if it is, it's going to also add the ignore. So here, the first thing it does, it goes left to right. So the first thing it does, it checks if it's blank. If it's blank, it says it's ignored. Then it says, okay, well, now I'm going to check if the last 5 letters, the letters on the right, are total. And if those are, if it's true, it's still going to be ignore. And if that's not true, it's going to be okay. So now if I do that, and I'm just pasting it down the entire way, I can actually filter out, go my summary here where I ignored my totals. So see, I've still got totals in it. Or right click that table and refresh. Oh, I went too far. Oops. Yeah, so I need to tell it to keep the OKs. There we go. Now I've got a really nice summary that skips all my totals, where I have duplicate information, and skips all my blanks. So I've got a nice, good summary data set. And yeah, that if statement, I use that one all the time for stuff like this. Because then if I have a new spreadsheet and I've kept my columns the same, I can actually have this formula already there in that template and just say, okay, when you add rows, you just copy it. And if I was at the bottom down here, if I added another row, you say, okay, just copy that formula, put it on that row, and it'll run.
Jacob, Dawn had asked the difference between sort and filter.
Sure. So with sorting, you're not going to hide any rows. With filtering, you're going to hide rows. So here, if I click sort ascending, it's going to put all my, and it's roughly alphabetical. So it'll put my symbols above my letters. So here, we've got percent or pound sign first, so that ignore goes first, and then OK is down here. If I filter though, so I'm just going to uncheck the OKs, it actually, you see it'll turn these numbers orange or blue. It depends on what version of Excel, but it'll turn the numbers a certain color. And you see here it skips from 374 to 602. So that actually hid. They didn't delete, it didn't remove. So if I do a pivot table or do any math on these, it's still going to include them. But it hid them so I can at least see a smaller list, all the OKs. And if I want those back, I can either go back to that same filter and add OK, or I can go to the data tab and click clear. I usually go to the data tab and click clear because it makes sure I didn't miss anything. If I have like 40 columns, it's really hard to see this little funnel icon, like up in the status column here. That icon, I just miss it. So if I go to clear, I know I've cleared out all my filters and I'm not missing anything. One thing that also occurs to me is the quick ribbon. So if you notice on mine, I've got a whole bunch of buttons that your Excel probably doesn't have. And that's because you can actually click the arrow that's up there and go to more commands. And you can find anything that's in these menus up here. You can add those to your quick ribbon at the top. So if I go down there, in my ribbon, I've got all these items, but if I wanted to add, let me see, something from that data tab, like refreshing the pivot table, I'd find it and add it to my list, and then it'll get added down there. If I click save, now I've got a new button up there that's for refreshing a pivot table. So if I go to my pivot table, yep, so now I've got that refresh button. So I do that for all the stuff that I do a lot. So I've got save, save as, undo, redo, sort A to Z, sort Z to A, make a pivot table, wrap text, auto fit the columns, auto fit the rows, freezing and unfreezing, freezing the top row. So any of the stuff I do a lot, I put up there, and then I don't have to hunt through the menus for it. So that, just look up the quick access toolbar. Is what you could just Google quick access toolbar, and we'll include a link if that's helpful. We can include a link on the follow-up email. And I'm going to delete that refresh because I don't need it. Cool. Yeah, any other questions people have or anything else you want to discuss? Well, I think that might be it for us then. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate you attending, and feel free to reach out. Let me go ahead and switch over my screen share here.
Yeah, thanks for coming. And it was really great to see everyone to answer questions. We really like to help people in this way to sort of help them with their data. So, so just, so like our thing that we are super passionate about is making data easier for nonprofits and fundraising professionals. So we like to help you take what you've got, and we do have a portal that we use for people that allows them to dump data from anywhere in spreadsheets and just dump it into a folder, and we can pull it all into an interactive reporting portal that's pretty high end, but not doesn't require you to change your systems. And so we will send out a follow-up email after this, which will give you the information you need to sign up for the next 2 webinars. So the second webinar is going to be on visualizing information. So we'll go over some basics, just some good best practices on visualizing data that you can use with Excel, but you can also, it doesn't matter what you're using. Like you could be using Razor's Edge or Salesforce, and you're still going to be putting together charts and graphs. And so that information will be helpful in the next one. And like this one, we'll provide some information, but leave it open for people to ask questions, and we're happy to sort of workshop things with people. The final one, and these will both happen this year, the third one is going to be on documentation, which is something you may not think about doing for your reports, but you've got a little hint of this in the way that Jacob sort of documents and tracks things. And maybe it was Anne. Someone said earlier that they really want to not reinvent the wheel every time they go to do reports in Excel, right? And so that's the goal of that third one, is to really help you to document things so that things, you know what you did last time, and it's very systematized and you're not kind of trying to figure it out each time.
And
So
that's actually a process that we do. Like we do automations too. We do a lot of those. So like if we're going to automate a process, first thing we do is write down the steps.
yeah,
So that, I mean, that's a really good, useful thing, no matter what you want to do next.
yeah, we practice what we preach, right? So yeah, but it's really good. But yeah, it's just something somebody may not have thought about it. So the other thing is we will do a free consultation. So if you are interested in just kind of talking through a specific problem, or you want our advice, we get all kinds of people contact us. It might be like, I can't figure this thing out in Excel. It might be we're trying to figure out what kind of a tool we want to use, or we're looking at different vendor products, or here's our data problem. We're not sure what the different ways are that we could approach it. So feel free to go to our website and you'll see right there that there's a way to book a free consultation with us. The other thing that's on the homepage of our website and easy to find if it applies to you is we have a PDF that you can download about how to choose a reporting tool. So if that's something that you're trying to figure out, that's also there as a free resource for you. So yeah, Rebecca, we don't know what we don't know, right? And it's nice to see someone like Jacob who can really make Excel do backflips, kind of go through some of these processes. So there will be those two other trainings. And also feel free to drop us a line if there's something in Excel in particular that you wanted, because as like I posted the blog post earlier, we have several blog posts on Excel. We also have some webinars we did earlier this year. And we'd also like to know kind of specifically, what do you want to know how to do in Excel? Because we can kind of think about putting those in for 2021 to do some sort of quick and easy webinars like this to kind of address those questions. But also don't hesitate to book a consultation
or little
do it.
videos. Yeah, we've done different things. So if you have if you ask us a question about, you know, oh, how do I handle duplicate data or something, we probably either have some content on it or might already, you know, be interested in making some. So
Yep, absolutely. So we really love knowing kind of what people are struggling with and what they're trying to figure out, so we can help them with that. So I think that's it. Did anybody have any other questions, requests, webinars they'd like to see in the future? All righty.
thanks everybody. Really appreciate
Thanks,
it.
everybody. Have a good rest of your day.
Okay.